Good morning. Good morning. It's a beautiful Monday morning. It's Monday, May the 18th, and it's good to be together again to worship to the Lord together by getting into His Word this morning. And I just want to say good morning to everybody. I haven't seen my mom on here yet, but I'm going to say good morning to her anyway because she may be here. So good morning, Mama. I love you. Good morning, Sonia and Sonia, both of you, and to Naum and Sarah, good morning. It's good to know that we're together this morning. And Deanna and Willis, Ron and Amy, congratulations, Ron and Amy, on the birth of your new grandbaby, your beautiful grandbaby, and Mazel Tov. We're very glad that she is here. Good morning to John and Wendy, and to Lauren and David and Levi and Valor and Haven and Everett. Good morning. To Pastor and Sister Martinez, so good to know that you're on here this morning. And Kelly and Gary, good morning. And Joyce and Joe, and Kelly in Kansas City, good morning. And to Ardell, and good morning, Janet. It's been a long time. Janet was with us when we were in Napa, California, our first ministry position. She was there, and so it's good to see that you're here with us this morning. Hey, good morning, John and Jan. And to the Osunas, good morning. And Susan and family, good morning to you as well. All right. Well, this morning is the 18th, and real quick, I posted something this morning. I was just having some fun. I was outside early, and I was working out, and my on the video, the guy tells me to hold this chair stance. And he says to hold it on your tiptoes. And all of a sudden I start thinking, wait, what in the world? Why do we call them tiptoes? My whole life I've called them tiptoes. But we don't call it. That's a weird way to phrase it, isn't it? I mean, isn't that strange? I mean, we don't say tip fingers. Touch it with your tip fingers. We say with your fingertips. Shouldn't we say stand on your toe tips? I mean, isn't that seems, anyway. And so I just began to realize that I'd been, not only had been taught this my whole life, but then had been perpetuating this atrocity by calling it tiptoes instead of toe tips. So you're welcome. All right. So yes, let me say hi to all of Susan's family, to Isaiah and Micah and Susan and Gabriella. Good morning. Smile, Gabriella. There you go. And Ezekiel and Luke. It's good to know that you are on here this morning. And yes, good morning. Welcome. We welcome Christina Lynn Barr, the newest family member, Ron and Amy's grandbaby. So we're so excited. All right. Well, last month the 18th was on a Shabbat, so we didn't go through any of the Psalms on the 18th, and so we haven't hit the 18th at all, right? So we've got Psalm 18 and 48 and 78 and 108 and 138. Every 30 Psalms, and we're probably only going to do Psalm 18 this morning, while I desperately want to do Psalm 78. But both 18 and 78 are really long, and they're really good. And they're different, obviously, but anyway, they're both powerful in so many ways. So I'm probably going to just have to exercise some self-control this morning and stick with Psalm 18 and save Psalm 78 for another day. So Psalm 18 is it's actually also it's the same as 2 Samuel 22. So 2 Samuel 22, the whole chapter is also Psalm 18, the same exact. And it says in the opening, it gives us this context of, it says, for the music director, a psalm of David, the servant of Adonai, he chanted the words of this song to Adonai on the day Adonai delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. And so right away, when is he singing this? Well, I think he probably sang it on multiple occasions. Initially when the Lord delivered him from the hand of Saul, but like 2 Samuel 22 is like at the end of his days, kind of recapping. He sang it. This is what he sang when he rejoiced when the Lord had delivered him after this time of being pursued and chased and being hiding away and the Lord had delivered him and then set him on the throne. And then now it's not as though the battle's ended. It's not as though once he arrived at the place that he thought was his destination, that somehow he could now just chill and enjoy the rest of his days without conflict. And so he sings it again at the end of his days. And even when I consider it on both counts, again, we've talked in the past about how there's a bird's eye view that we get in some Psalms of a God's eye view of where we're able to look back over a lengthy period of time and see God has been faithful all the way through. Many of the Psalms are seeing the forest in the forest. And this is one of the Psalms that sees it from above, that sees the path that the Lord led us on to the place of victory and how he came and fought our battles. And that in the midst of when you're in it, you look to these to say, Lord, give me the perspective to know that you will bring me through, that you are fighting for me. And sometimes when we're saying, how long, O Lord, how long, O Lord, this isn't a how long, O Lord psalm. This is he never fails. He came through. And so this is an amazing, it's definitely one of my favorites. And it's so good. So let's jump right in. So on the day that the Lord delivered David from Saul, on the day that he delivered him from the hand of his enemies, and again, just remember that, when Samuel came looking for Jesse's son, and he ended up kind of being an afterthought. Oh yeah, well I got one more son out in the fields. And the Lord, and he was called in, and the Lord basically said to Samuel, "That's the guy." And that right there in the presence of his brothers, who were later going to mock him and say, I know you're just here because you're here to enjoy watching battle. You're not here to fight. And his older brothers who seemed to resent him even. But in that moment, in front of his brothers, in front of his family, that Samuel poured the oil over him, and he was anointed as the king to be. And yet Saul was still king. And there were multiple occasions where David could have said, you know what, the Lord promised me this, and I'm going to take it. But he said, no, I'm going to let the Lord fight my battles. I will not touch the Lord's anointed. And so David faced injustice. He was running for his life in the midst of things that he was walking in innocence, that his heart was pure before the Lord. He kept laying his heart before the Lord, staying blameless before the Lord, in that he did not make rationalizations in order to kill Saul. He did not make rationalizations in order to take the throne earlier than it was time. And so that the time between when he was anointed and the time and between when he was put on the throne is about a decade of running for his life in many ways. And so when that was all done, here's what he said. He said, I love you, Adonai, my strength. Adonai is my rock, my fortress, my deliverer. My God is my rock, my tzur, my strength. In him I take refuge. My shield, my horn of salvation, my stronghold. So all of these pictures, God is my rock. He's my fortress. He's my refuge. He's the picture of a horn. When the scripture talks about the horn, we often think of the shofar, and that's appropriate. But the shofar, when it's the horn, when it's on the ram, right, is the strength of the ram. The ram can be in battle because of its horns. It can battle with its horns, and so a horn is a sign of strength. And then of course it's also what is used to call out. And so the Lord is the horn of my deliverance, the strength of my deliverance, the one upon whom I call for my salvation. He's my stronghold. Verse 4, I called upon Adonai, worthy of praise. and I was rescued from my enemies. Again, God's eye view, bird's eye view, perspective from after the battle. So then he remembers, cords of death entangled me. Torrents of Belial overwhelmed me. Cords of Sheol coiled around me. Snares of death came before me. So there's this poetic description of just the darkness was closing in. I was being suffocated. I was being bound up. I was surrounding me. Death was holding me. I almost like this picture of like where you could just eke out, help. That's sort of what the imagery, at least in my mind when I read this. In my distress, verse 7, I called on Adonai and cried to my God for help. And from his temple, he heard my voice. My cry before him came into his ears. And so it's that picture, and the picture it's about to paint is not, obviously David's praying this. The temple, Solomon's temple, hasn't been constructed yet, and it's simply to be a representation of God's dwelling place, right? And so from the place where his glory dwells, he heard me. He heard my help. And here's how he responded. And my cry came before him into his ears. Then the earth rocked and quaked. The foundations of mountains trembled. They reeled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils, and consuming fire came from his mouth. So when I, as his child, called out to him, and he saw me in my distress, and he saw what the enemy was trying to do, here's when we talk about the word for he's slow to anger, and it says he's slow to flare his nostrils, because the word for anger, af, is also the word for nostrils. He's slow to, and here, when he heard that his child, the one over whom he had spoken his name, was calling out, he rose up, his nostrils flared, fire went before him, consuming fire from his mouth, coals blazed before him. He parted the heavens, and he came down with a thick darkness under his feet. And so there's even there a picture of when it's talking about him coming in the clouds here. Well, let me continue. He rode upon a cherub and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his cover, his sukkah all around him, dark waters, thick clouds. So he's coming in power. The Lord has heard the call. He's heard the cry. He is coming. His nostrils have flared, and he is coming to the rescue because of his great love, right? And we're going to see that later. Because of his faithfulness. But when he comes, I can't quite, also the picture is of mystery. There's a mysteriousness to him, that as he comes in clouds of darkness, as it were, in a darkness before him, it's not darkness as in like an evil darkness, it's a mysterious darkness. It's I can't see fully what he's doing. I can't fully grasp him at work, but yet he is on the way. Verse 14. Also Adonai, did I skip? 13. Out of the brilliance, or the light, out of the brilliance before him passed his thick clouds, and hail and fiery coals. Adonai also thundered in the heavens, and the Elyon, the Most High, gave forth his voice. His word spoke. He made a shout, like there's the shout of victory, the shout of like when you watch like battle movies, especially older ones, like when they are on the horses and they're going to ride into the victory, and the one in front yells out and shouts, and then there's a battle that ensued. And so the Lord sent forth his voice. Gave forth his voice, hail and fiery coals. He shot his arrows and scattered them, hurling lightning bolts and routed them. Then, as he's coming, then ravines or rivers of water appeared. The foundations of earth were exposed at your rebuke, Adonai, at a blast of breath from your nostrils. So here it's entangling around me, the cords of death, the pit. I'm in the pit, and it's crushing me. And at your rebuke, the earth splits, and there, to the point where you can see the waters that are flowing, the rivers that have been hidden, the sources of life that have not been able to be seen, that at his rebuke, that at his spirit, when he says no, I'm sorry if I said that too loud for the microphone, that it breaks, and you see there is life, and you see the foundations of the earth exposed at the when he does that, coming to say, who's messing with what is mine, with who is mine? Verse 17, he reached down from on high, and he took hold of me. He drew me out of mighty waters. So now you're like, I'm in torrents. I can't. Years ago, I was when I was in high school, we went on a youth trip, and I went river rafting on the Nantahala River in North Carolina, and we get to the end, and there's this major waterfall, and our boat, and I'm 15 at the time, and our little raft hits this section, and we get kind of stuck in this vortex. We're not going anywhere. We're not against a rock. We're stuck. Well, we were stuck, and now water was rushing into our boat. And I remember like my friend Danny Ray was in the boat, and he was a cut up, and he was laughing, and we were all laughing, and before that, and all of a sudden, very quickly, this boat begins to fill up, and I turn around, and it happens very fast, but very slow all at the same time, and you're assessing the situation, that it's dangerous. And I look around, and I see Danny's face, and there is no longer laughter on his face, but just terror gripping him, because the weight of this river is just coming at us, and it's pushing us. It's filling our boat. And so I have kind of this picture, and then I was praying, and somehow we got off. But here, there's these torrents that are coming in. It's water's too powerful for me. I can't do anything about it. And his hand, he drew me out of mighty waters. He saved me from my powerful enemy. So my enemy was stronger than me, but his mighty arm, he flared his nostrils. I said, help. And he got up, and he rode his chariots, and he came, wind and coals, and he came to our rescue. And I felt like in that moment, how long, O Lord, how long, O Lord? But the rescuer was on the way. And it was at a point where I was drowning, and yet he exposed everything, and he reached down, and he pulled me out by his mighty hand. He saved me from my powerful enemy, from those who hated me, for they were much stronger than me. And then it talks about how these enemies, how they operated. They came against me. They opposed me in the day of my calamity. When things were difficult for me, they piled on. They opposed me in the day of they tried to shove me over. They came against me to rout me, basically, to run me over. But Adonai was my support. And the word for support there has to do with he was my, it's also used for like a stick of support, like when you're old and you need a cane to hold you up, that he was the one holding me up when they were coming against me in the day of my difficulty, coming against me to finish me off, and he's got me. He was my support. Verse 20, so he lifted me up. He brought me out to a wide open place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. Again, that word delighted there is chafetz, because his will is also chafetz. His desire, chafetz. His delight, chafetz. Because he wanted to, but he delighted, he desired me, he delighted in me, he loved me. So he continues, Adonai, now I want to hit these next verses. Adonai rewarded me for my righteousness. For the cleanness of my hands, he repaid me. So David says something here that to believers, they read it, and it almost sounds like because we say it's not because of works of righteousness that I have done, but according to his mercy he saved me. But what he's expressing here is a vindication, that I've walked in obedience to him. That when it would have been easy, when it would have been convenient for me to go, you know what, I'm going to get off the path of righteousness because it's not working out for me, because it's taken too long. It looks like, and those other Psalms where he says, I almost lost my step. I almost faltered in the way because I looked at the way of the wicked and it looks like it's easy for them. But then I came into the sanctuary of your house. Because it looks like it's easy for them, and I go, have I done all this? Have I been faithful for nothing? I feel like I haven't experienced your righteousness at all. Where are you, Lord? So that's when he was down in the woods. And here now he's saying the Lord was faithful to accomplish what he said he would do. That when he says in Deuteronomy, and he says, today I set before you life and death, blessing and cursing, now choose life, that you and your children may live. And he's saying, walk according to my instructions. Walk according to what I've told you to do. Listen to me. And not just and what we would see, and what if we were going into Psalm 78 today, which we're not, we can't. And then through the prophets, you know what? Read Psalm 78 and then do this. Read Hosea. Read Hosea 6, 7, and 8. You can read the whole book, but with Psalm 78. And he talks about your heart wasn't with me. But I don't want to jump all over that. But you said these things with your mouth, but your heart wasn't there. Where the Lord said, or David says, you honored your word. You were faithful to your word. I kept my hands clean. I didn't take it upon. I didn't cut down Saul in the cave. And everybody else said, you're nuts. Why don't you are you crazy? Twice God's put him into your hand. And then they viewed it through that perspective, and he said, no, I will not. I will not. You think it's nuts, but no. I'm going to keep my hands pure, my heart pure. I'm going to keep my eyes on the Lord. And here he says, you honored that. You rewarded me for my righteousness. For the cleanness of my hands, he repaid me. Verse 22, for I kept the ways, the paths, the path of Adonai, Derech, and did not turn wickedly from my God. I didn't turn to that path. For all of his mishpatim, his judgments, his words of justice, his wise words of what is correct and right are in front of me, are before me. I do not put his rulings away from me. I also had integrity with him and kept myself from sin. So Adonai rewarded me for my righteousness, for the cleanness of my hands in his eyes. And so here you see this sort of like little inclusio, little bookend within the psalm of he rewarded me for my righteousness, repaid me for the cleanness of my hands. And here it tags on in his eyes, because that's the only place it matters. Whether my works look righteous, whether everything looks righteous in the eyes of people, whether it looks clean and pure and I put on a good show, doesn't really mean jack squat. It's in his eyes. He sees our heart. He sees our motive. He sees what we do when no one else sees, so that he saw that I walked in integrity and did not walk selfishly and turn this into my own way. Verse 26. With the loyal, you deal loyally. Now, this word, loyal, is chassid. So it's a word that you might recognize, in the Orthodox Jewish world, when you see the guys who are all dressed in black with the payas and they're davening and the whole bit. And they're called chassids, and it means godly ones, right? But chassid is from the root word chesed. So we call it godliness because it's It's God likeness. And who is he? He is chesed. God is love. He is chesed. So those who reflect him walk in his love. Let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. If you don't love God, you don't know God, because God is love, right? So God is chassid. And to those who operate with your chesed, you deal with chesed. You give them, you continually overflow in your chesed. With the blameless, you are blameless. With the pure, you are pure. And with the crooked, with the bent, with those who think they're sly and they're twisting things to make it work in their own way, he says, you are shrewd, you are clever. And this gives that kind of picture of, God is not mocked. You can't play games with God. You can't go through a kind of a legalistic righteousness devoid of what's in your heart and think that just by going through the motions, that is what is acceptable to the Lord. And then I would point you again to go to Hosea 6, 7, and 8. There's a million places you could go to for that point, that God is interested in our hearts. And he says, you came to me with your words of this, but they were empty. They weren't in your heart. It was nothing in your heart. You think it fooled me? It didn't fool me. And so with the crooked, with those who are trying to twist and pervert and bend things, you're not tricked. You deal with them shrewdly. Verse 28. For you save lowly people, the afflicted, but haughty eyes, you save humble, lowly people, but haughty eyes, exalted eyes, you humble. And so there's again this picture, we see it throughout the scripture, of the eyes that are filled with arrogance. And I don't know, if you've ever had a conversation with someone, like if you're talking to one of your kids, say a teenager, you'll see this with teenagers, and maybe you're trying to explain something to them, and they set their face hard. And maybe they know well enough not to battle back. Maybe they're like, well, it's not going to get me anywhere. But they kind of harden their face, and they look at you, and they go, okay. And they're not battling back, but their eyes are one of arrogance, of like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And the Lord's having none of that. That the eyes reflect what's in the heart, and when we humble our eyes and we humble our hearts, our eyes humble. When there's a softness, he sees it, and he says that haughty eyes you humble. Verse 29. Man, I'm just barely over halfway through this. For you light up my lamp. Adonai, my God, illuminates or shines in my darkness. Like it's you. I've got this lamp, but it's you that lights it up. I can't see, but until I look at you, you illuminate the darkness. With you, I rush on a troop. With my God, I scale a wall. And that's a verse for me. Since I was like 4 years old, this group came to our congregation. They were a quartet singing, and they would sing this, I can run through a troop and leap over a wall, hallelujah. I was like 4 years old. And this one guy would do this growl with his voice, anyway. And I would do it when I was a little boy, so I think of that every time I read this. Anyway, sorry. For with you, I can face something that is beyond my strength. With you, I can rush on a troop. With my God, I can scale a wall. As for God, his way is perfect, complete, whole. The word of Adonai is pure. He is a shield to all who take refuge in him. For who is God except Adonai? And who is a rock except our God? God girds me with strength. Excuse me. And he makes my paths straight. He makes my paths, he's the one that lays forth a path. He strengthens me. He clothes me in strength, and then he straightens my path. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge him, and he will straighten your path. He makes my feet like those of a deer, so he makes me nimble. He makes me quick. He makes me stand on my heights, on great heights. He raises me up, as it were. He teaches or trains my hands for battle, so my arms can bend a bronze bow. And in Hosea chapter 7, it talks about that he trained the hands of Ephraim, but they didn't use what he had trained them for his glory. But he is the one who trains us. He is the one who prepares us, who teaches us how to fight. And that's where, of course, in Ephesians 6, we don't our wrestling, our battle is not against flesh and blood. It's not a flesh and blood battle. So he trains us for the kind of war to which he has called us. The kind of war David even fought when he did not cut down Saul, that you wait on the Lord. He says, you gave me the shield of your salvation. Your right hand upholds me. Your gentleness, and it's the word for like humility, you coming down to me makes me great. You humbling yourself lifts me up. Your gentleness, your kindness, you train my hands for war. How he patiently teaches us, how he holds our hands and shows us how he strengthens us, shows us how to fight if we'll listen to his words. And his gentleness, he's not a drill sergeant, right? Yeah, soldier! But his gentleness uplifts us, makes us great. Verse 37, you broaden my steps beneath me, so my ankles have not slipped. He keeps going before us, preparing the path so that we don't sprain our ankles. He keeps going before us, right before us, making a level path. I pursue my enemies and overtake them, and will not or do not return till they are wiped out. I will crush them till they cannot rise, till they fall beneath my feet. Why? Because of my strength? Well, no, because you girded me with strength for battle. It's not because it was my authority or my strength. It's not because I'm not supposed to get all puffed up and be like, did you see what I did? Man, I took on the powers of darkness and me. And no, it's because of you, and only because of you, your authority and your strength. You strengthened me. You made those who rose up against me bow down before me. You also made their enemies turn their backs to me, like they turned to flee. I cut off those who hate me. They cry out, but there is none to save, even to Adonai, but he did not answer them. They called out to the Lord, and he did not answer them, because their heart wasn't with him. And again, Hosea 6, 7, and 8. Read that. Read Jeremiah chapter 10. There are times where if you call out to manipulate God, if you call out to him, but your heart is intent on not walking with him, he is not fooled. He is not tricked by our words. He sees our hearts. And when he sees a heart that in humility turns to him and calls and says, forgive me, I need you, Lord, rescue me, he says he will answer. Read Isaiah chapter 30. But here these call out to him, but their hearts are intent on doing wicked. As soon as he would answer them, they would return to their way of wickedness, and he knows that. So he does not answer them. It says, then I beat them as fine dust before the wind. I pour them out like mud in the streets. You free me from strifes of the people. You set me as head of the nations. People I didn't know are serving me. As soon as they hear, they obey me. Children of foreigners cringe before me. Like he's amazed at what's happened. Like people I didn't know are serving me. These children, sons of from other nations, of foreigners, they're like cringing before me. They're coming out of they come trembling from their hideouts, from their castles, from their refuges. Verse 47. Again, so he's not exulting in his own victory, in his own strength, in look what I've become. It's like, look what you have done. Like, you trained me for this. You made me strong. You made me fast. You made me quick. You made me nimble. You kept leveling out a path. You kept making a way before me. And look what's happened. They turned and ran. They're calling out to you, but you are faithful. Adonai lives, and blessed be my rock. Exalted be God, my salvation. God, he gives me vengeance and subdues peoples under me. And that word subdues has to do with his word, devar. He speaks. His word quiets them. He delivers me from my enemies. Indeed, you lift me up above those who rise against me. You deliver me from the violent man. Therefore, I praise you among the nations, Adonai, and sing praises to your name. Great victories he gives to his king. He shows chesed, loyal love to his anointed, to David and his seed forever. And as children of the Most High, as sons and daughters, we are, Isaiah 53, speaking of the suffering servant, talks about how, says of the suffering servant, that you will basically see your offspring, right? The one who was cut off from the land of the living is now alive and rejoices and sees his offspring. And we are the offspring of what Yeshua has done. And he shows covenant faithfulness, covenant love, covenant loyalty to those who continue to walk in faithfulness to him. Forever. So that's Psalm 18. There's no way we can get into Psalm. I couldn't even begin in Psalm 78 today, so we're just going to have to, you can do that on your own, slow down, enjoy it, and it's really good. So let me say good morning to anyone else who's gotten on here. Okay, hold on, let me back up. I want to say, excuse me, hi to Ruti. It's good to see, I know who you are, to say hi to you this morning, and to Elizabeth and Jesse and Salome and Philip, and good morning to Lori and Pat, and to Jerry. Is that James? That's James. Yeah, James. Hey, James, how you doing, buddy? It's good to see that you're on here this morning, and to Joe and Joyce and Tim and Cindy and Carmen, good morning, and Lisa, good morning up in the great Northeast. It's good to see that you're here with us this morning. All right, and my youth pastor from when I was in high school, my mom says that Brother Larry is watching, so he was there taking us on that rafting trip in 1990. That was a long time ago. The Lord is good, and he is faithful. And I love Psalm 18. Let's keep that bird's eye view. Keep returning to the bird's eye view, even when we're down in the forest, even when you're in moments where you don't know about where it looks like the enemy is winning, where it looks like you're losing. Is to stop and say, Lord, what is it you want to teach me? What is it you want to form in me? What is it you want to do in me? Because when David was running from his enemies, when he was in that pit and wrapped and felt like he was drowning, the Lord was forming him. The Lord was on his way, but the Lord was shaping him for the kind of king that he wanted him to be. The Lord was using the difficulties to purify him. And the Lord uses the things that we face to train our hands, to train us for battle, to teach us to fight like he fights. And his gentleness is what makes us great. His chesed, to the chassid, to the loving, he is loving. Right? He is pure. He is faithful. So let's continue to imitate, Ephesians 5:1, be imitators of God, to imitate his character, to be like him, not just on the things that we say on the outside, but on the things that we hold to in our hearts. That when my heart begins to be full of stuff that is not reflective of him, that I release that to him, that I give that to him, and that I say, Lord, keep forming me. Make sure that the anger when you experience an anger, lay it before the Lord. Say, is this a is this righteous or is this unrighteous? And give it to him. The Lord is your defender. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. Keep releasing to him and keep trusting in him and keep waiting on him. Keep him when you feel like you're almost out of breath, cry out, help. And the Lord is on, help is on the way. He is faithful. He never fails. Amen? Amen. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you, be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful Monday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.